Hi, guys. I feel like sometimes we forget how similar chimpanzees and humans really are. I mean, not only do they hurl poop at people at zoos, but they even have wars. In fact, they once had a war that lasted for 4 years called the Gombe Chimpanzee War. This story begins in the 1970s with Jane Goodall, who served as the director of a research center in Tanzania, which studied chimps in their natural habitat. In Gombe National Park, there were plenty of chimpanzee communities made up to 40 chimpanzees just chilling and enjoying life. At this point in history, we don't actually know too much about chimpanzees' life in the wild, so Jane is actually the first to provide evidence of territorialism in chimps, which she did by following them around while they were foraging for food. Occasionally, male chimps would patrol and raid into other chimp community territories to steal and scavenge for food resources. However, territorialism and violence between different groups of chimps happened in very isolated cases, and it was mainly targeted towards young chimps left alone or isolated female chimps. When groups of male chimps would meet each other, it would be a lot more show than action. To put it into perspective, it would be like being on a field trip and seeing another school also on a field trip. You hate each other, but nobody's going to do anything about it. So the male chimps just stand there making loud noises and swinging with branches trying to intimidate each other, and after a while, they would just go about their day again. So it came as an absolute surprise when Jane was the first to witness an all-out war between two groups of chimps. The conflict begins to arise when the alpha chimp of a group, Mike, steps down as the alpha chimp. Of 14 other males in the group, 6 of them started spending more time in the southern parts of the group's territory and increasingly started to isolate themselves from the main part of the group in the north. Over the course of some months, the southern group began becoming more hostile towards the main group in the north, and the leaders of the southern faction, two brothers called Hugh and Charlie, would begin going into the Northern Territory to confront other males in an action of hostility. 2 years after the split in the group, the Southern community was now fully its own group led by Hugh and Charlie. Now, everything had been sort of smaller conflicts and mainly just displays of aggression until January 7th, 1974, when males from the Northern group ambushed a male called Gombe from the Southern group as he was feeding in a tree. Despite Godey's attempt to escape from the group, they caught him, cornered him, and, how do I say this without getting banned? They threw him on the ground and repeatedly beat him until he was just a relic of the past. Jane noted that after they beat him to a memory, the Northern group celebrated by screaming, hooting, and dragging his body around until they eventually returned to their territory. This was actually the first time in history we had documented chimpanzees deliberately attempting to kill a fellow male chimpanzee. After the beating of Gombe, the Northern group went on other patrols where they also caught Day, another chimp from the Southern faction foraging for food alone, where they then also turned Day into an RIP post. And not long after that, the Northern group on another patrol caught Goliath, a senior male from the Southern group alone, and they put him on a t-shirt as well. Jane notes that Hugh, a leader from the Southern faction, also disappeared without her seeing how, and she assumes he was also the victim of the Northern group. At this point, it's not looking too good for the Southern group. In fact, they only had 3 males left, Charlie, Sniff, and Willie, who was crippled from polio, which I'm going to assume means he's not combat ready. Poor Willie. Actually, the more I research this, it seems less and less like a chimpanzee war and more like a massacre of the Southern Territory, because the next victim of the Southern group was Charlie, the leader. Jane found his body with, and I quote, terrible injuries along a stream. After Charlie, the Northern group finished off Madam B, a female from the Southern group. As for Willie the polio chimp, he was never actually confirmed to be eradicated, but he was also never seen again. And judging from the Northern group's history, I'm just going to let you do the math. The last to go was Sniff, who was a young, lonely male from the Southern group. And after that, there was no more. Just like that, the entire Southern faction had been wiped off the earth in 4 years of a very one-sided war. Most professionals didn't believe Jane when she reported her observations, as this at the time was considered very unnatural behavior from chimps, but came to find out they're actually just psycho killers. In Jane's own words, For several years, I struggled to come to terms with this new knowledge. Often I woke in the night to horrific images of Satan, one of the chimps from the north, cupping his hand below Sniff's neck to drink his blood. I think it's safe to say chimps are ranked at the top of the most brutal animals. And there you have it, guys, the Gombe Chimpanzee War, although very one-sided and more of a massacre. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you next time.